Hi, this is Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Today we're going to cover a new project I'm working on called the Hitt Family Farm. It is actually a complete from raw land to complete homestead in about a year to 2 years, and I'm going to take you along in the journey. One of the things that we're going to talk about is the steps that you take to design a permaculture or holistic style property, including design considerations such as water and access, how to best manage and utilize the contours of the property, how to go into the design based on kind of building from the ground up, from the design of what you've got to what would be best for the overall farm. We'll talk about things like what animals you want to raise and what animals are best to raise on that land. We're actually going to go through all the steps that I'd go through as a consultant working with a property owner to transform their land from not as useful to high utility value farm or homestead property. Now, this is 24 acres that we're working on, but it doesn't matter whether it's 5 acres or 500 acres. The methodology is the same. But one of the things that I'm going to do different from other people who talk about design is I'm going to layer on top of the permaculture design the financial aspects of how do you pay for the land, how do you make the land pay for itself, and how do you make sure that you can move there and live there in abundance. Now, what do I mean by live there in abundance? First off, it does you no good if you go to a property and you transform it into the dream home that you've always wanted, and you raise the animals that you've always wanted, and then economically, or because the animals are not of interest to the marketplace, you don't have a product or value for the overall marketplace, and you end up sinking all your money into equipment and property and things that you can't really get a return on investment. I want to help you go from a dream to an actual reality using a subsistence method, which basically produces replacement income and replacement product as you move towards your dream. So let's put this in plain English. It means that right now you start to feed yourself. Right now you start getting value from the land without destroying it. Right now you start moving towards that dream. And sometimes that means hiring people. It means hiring a farm manager. It might mean parking a trailer out there so someone can live on site and take care of the animals while you live somewhere else and work a full-time job. Kind of what I'm going to talk about is a kick in the balls to the people who have these big dreams that might never happen, because I'm talking about making something happen right now. Inflation is right around the corner. If that turns into hyperinflation, the food value that you're creating from your property could be the only food you can afford. Right now, we're looking at a property, this 24 acres. I've purchased the 24 acres. I own the 24 acres, but I can only access probably 1,200 feet of it, and there's no home site there. There's no trees that are worth timbering. And you might be saying, well, Justin, you bought a crappy property, because everybody knows you buy the land, you timber the trees, and then you build your home. But what everybody knows is not the right answer in the majority of situations. And let me tell you why. While there's all this complaint about the rich and the poor and the giant gap between the two, what a lot of people don't understand, and I talk about this in some of my other newsletters, is that you can live a very comfortable living with an average adjusted gross income. Now, we won't get into taxes, but as a farm property in Virginia, you have a right to farm. There's right to farm legislation. There's right to farm legislation in other areas. If you run an actual farm, you can write off your expenses before your income. So an actual farm that makes $100,000 a year might have an adjusted gross income after the expenses of breeding. Do you know sheep and goats are $200 a piece as little babies? A breeder could be $400. Chickens could be $20 each for a young laying hen. It goes on and on. All those expenses come off the top line, meaning they're subtracted from your total income. Now, if your farm starts out at $50,000 a year gross income, which, by the way, most farms won't. Most farms will come off like $5,000 gross income. You want to be in a position wherever you are on that spectrum to help your family sustain the effort of developing this dream and outcome you desire. So it might mean taking that dream and breaking it down into 5 or 10 steps. Maybe the first step is simply finding land that has the greatest opportunity for someone who knows how to manage it. Now, this is very important. See, as you learn how to manage it, you're looking for property, and then you find that property, you might be able to buy the worst property and transform it into the best desire and the best value for you. See, you don't have to pay $8,000 an acre, $12,000 an acre. You could start right where you are today, gaining and practicing and leveraging the skills, improving your health, improving your clarity of mind, improving your own cost perspective. Now you're going to learn how to track some of these things. We're not going to go into the accounting in this program, but we're ultimately going to go into what do you need to know. Look, you're spending, the USDA says a family of 2 spends $7,200 a year in 2020 for food. Now that used to be like $3,000 a year, but inflation and food costs from all the way from Bush Jr. through Obama, through Trump, or through Clinton and all those other folks. Look, food prices are going up. So let's cut that out of your budget by growing your own food. You're going to get better healthy food. You're going to get food with fewer miles on it, meaning it's less carbon in the atmosphere and the environment. You're going to get the experience of growing maybe a 20-foot by 20-foot garden before you own a farm that might have a garden that's 2 acres in size. See, the dream's okay. I'm not going to discount your dream. In fact, I'm going to help you build a solid foundation under that dream so that you actually achieve it soon rather than later. And so even before you own a piece of land, you can actually use the skills that are necessary to run the land, and then you'll understand that scalability to approach your land. But then you find the right piece of property for you. It's the right property for you. You know, the best property that's best for you is a property that is not good for somebody else. Let me explain. Property prices are climbing like crazy. Bill Gates, the largest landowner of farmland properties, is paying up to $21,000 an acre. Now, he's got people that buy this land for strategic purposes. I want you to do the same, but I don't want you to pay $21,000 an acre. I want you to pay $15,000, $2,000, and maybe $5,000 at the most. But you find the property that is the worst property for someone else. That lowers the cost in the marketplace because the demand is low. And then you get it for yourself. Now, that doesn't mean that you're getting a bad piece of land. You might find a family farm where people have aged out of the farm, and they don't want to sell it to a developer. They want to sell it to a farmer. And the land might already be ready for you to go. Mend the fences. I looked at a property and did some videos on it where the house was in good condition. The fences simply needed to be mended. They were kind of installed as paddocks a little bit awkwardly, but it would take some minor adjustments while you're repairing the fences. There were some challenges about where they placed the water in relative to contour and slopes, and they were running cattle on the property. So there would need to be some adjustments for that cattle, but it came with a cattle lease. So the property itself was $330,000, 70 acres. It came with a cattle lease. It needed some fence repairs, probably $30,000 in fence repairs, and then it didn't have a barn or anything. It needed some adjustments for your like a greenhouse. It was getting about $3,000 a year in cattle lease, so the land was being leased to somebody else. And ultimately, if the cattle were paddocked rather than allowing to just roam over the 25 acres of fenced area, if they were paddocked in smaller spaces, you could have started some regenerative growth there to get the grass up, and then you could have had other animals on the same land as paddocks were recovering. But that's part of the plan. That may not make any sense to you right now. It's part of your plan. When you find a piece of property. Now, I didn't buy that $330,000 piece of property because it was not something that I had the cash flow for to get right now. I did spec it out for another buyer. It ended up being sold, and it went for a good. That's a good price for that land. Now, I've also seen 88 acres for $200,000 that had $12,000 in cash flow for the property. I've seen all kinds of opportunities. Now, what does it mean by cash flow from the property? It is possible to buy farmland and have it pay you. Now, there's a period at the end of that sentence. It means you've bought the land and the property taxes are X and the cash flow from the property is X. And you were able to pay a good price for the land, you have a low payment, and you're able to put a renter on the land, for example. It has an okay farmhouse. It's not your dream farmhouse. And you can afford to buy the property without moving there. And you rent out the property as a rental while you use the agricultural land for agricultural purposes. And you might not be the one that's using it. You could actually lease it to someone else. But anyway, I want to introduce this program to you. If you're interested in making your dream farm, homestead, or estate come true, and I'm not talking about commercial agriculture where you're taking on a bunch of loans. I'm talking about agricultural environment that's holistic, that you're stepping into over time. I actually did a survey recently of this 24 acres that we're going to use in this documentary. And we started out first by getting the plot straight. We bought a map that was a surveyed map, that like what the city has. We went out and found the steel posts in the ground. There's the corner markers are really well defined on this property. And we started doing a geological or a terrain survey of the land. So we took the contour maps and we went out to the property and found the markers, and we started getting a lay of the land. The first thing you're going to do when you get a piece of property, whether it's a good piece of property or a bad piece of property, is you're just going to understand the property itself. You're going to start where the property is more than anything else. But I can show you how these things work. I can help you do them with your own property, and I can walk you through the whole series. We're going to have this series on the podcast with a tutorial on the Prosperity Homestead website. So you can actually go in and see the details of how we do this survey. Now, I'm still discussing with the partners on this project how we want to handle security, because we don't necessarily want you to know where our land is. We want you to know where your land is. And in fact, you can pick a piece of property to do this, even if you don't own land already. And if you're living somewhere, you could actually use the land you're on, and we'll show you how to scale all these things. Now, we will do a more technical approach than a lot of permaculture folks, than a lot of the regenerative land folks are talking, because we want you to have a tangible plan that can actually be implemented. So, for example, our survey includes how we want a forest mower to come through there. We surveyed the trees, and there aren't any trees to timber. This land was actually timbered about 5 years ago, and it's just scrub regrowth. So we actually surveyed it for a forest mower to come out and mow access points. They're not going to mow the whole thing. They're just going to basically mow perimeter and access points across the land. And then later we will put in temporary fencing or a permanent fence, depending on the prices. And we'll run goats in the forest, because the trees are literally a foot apart and they're about 3 inches of diameter. It's really hard to navigate this particular property because the trees are so small. There probably isn't a tree on the property over 10 feet tall. And they're so small and they're so dense because of its just scrub regrowth that the forest mower option's best. Now, if you get on a piece of property and has 30-year-old trees on it, there's a different approach to that. I've been on a couple properties where the trees were like 3 feet in diameter, and there was probably 20 to 30 feet between a tree. Everything underneath it was shaded out. And in that situation, you can go in with a bush hog, or you can go in with a string trimmer with a blade on the end of it and really easily clear that out. Then come out, or while they're timbering the trees, have it cleared out, and you can be in a property quick. We'll talk about those variations. We'll talk about how to approach a piece of property. But I need to hear from you about, what are your biggest questions? What are your biggest questions about acquiring that dream piece of land now, getting started in this small farm, homestead, or estate today, and moving tangibly towards the dreams and desires you have right now? When you visit www.prosperityhomestead.org, simply go to the contact page and contact us by fax, by email, by whatever means necessary, and tell me about those challenges. What are those challenges? What are you facing? What's been the problem about the information online? I personally think the information online is just touching the surface. When you start volunteering on someone else's farm, or you start going out and applying this even in a small garden plot, you're going to discover that what they can share online is very surface level. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this because some of them are selling consulting services, but most of them are doing these short videos because they're busy. They can't go into the detail and the depth that's necessary to actually make this happen. Now, because I'm in the development stage of a property, I can share these details as we progress towards the particular dream or outcome that I desire. But here's the problem with that. I'm going to share with you just the skeleton. I'm not going to share with you the day-to-day because it's not practical. But if I can give you the technical skeleton that other people are missing, and you've put the flesh on it with Jeff Lawton and all these different folks that are out there showing you the end result and showing you the fun stuff, you'll be able to actually do this, and then we'll have a Q&A ability. So whatever the challenges you're facing today, what are the fears, what are the frustrations, what are the concerns you have, visit www.prosperityhomestead.org and write me. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear how challenging it's been, about the good resources that you've found. I want to hear about all those details so I can make sure that our limited time together, I'm delivering to you what helps you do this now. Right now, the economy is changing. The political system is changing. You need to be in sustainment as quickly as possible. Now, sustainment is before prosperity. Sustainment is regular vegetables from your garden. Maybe it's 4-season gardening at the place that you're already at. Maybe it's working in someone else's greenhouse, or working on a farm share, or working in a community-sponsored agriculture so that you can start getting the experience, but you can also start getting direct access to your food. It's also about the health and nutrition, being able to access healthy and nutritious food that you know was raised in a humane and holistic way, meaning the animals were taken care of, and meaning that they didn't put junk and chemical garbage on your food. See, I'm going to help you get there. That's what's different about Prosperity Homestead. It's about right now and where you're at, getting started in the right direction. I'm here to answer your questions. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. I have a permaculture design certification. I've done organic gardening, but the difference is I've done program management. I've managed programs for corporations. I've done consulting projects, hundreds and hundreds of consulting projects, and I get results for my clients. I'll take you along the way to this journey of the Hitt family farm, and you'll see what doesn't work and you'll see what works. And we're going to do videos and supplements available on the website and periodically in the podcast. Again, thank you for listening. I'm here to help small farms, homesteads, and estates reach their dream of prosperity, reach their dream of sustainability, reach their dream of financial and physical security. Thanks for listening.